Hello everyone, I'm Ricky, the co-founder of Numi and Numi Search Ventures, and I'm your host today. Welcome to our first episode of Breaking Down Barriers. Everything is centered around building and scaling technology companies in the MENA region. Today's guest is Himanshu, who brings 2 decades of engineering leadership experience from the Valley, working from Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. Today, he is now the CTO of Property Finder, the largest real estate marketplace platform in the region, and also an investor. Today, we're going to unpick everything centered around engineering excellence, raising the bar, building and scaling technology companies, and in general, what is the current technology state in the MENA region. Interestingly, we actually both moved to the region around about the same time, I think start of the year,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I know what drove the decision for me, but first question, what drove that decision for you? Because I think part and parcel that is a part of some of the transition and change to be able to attract executives from the States like yourself. So I'd like to kind of unpick and understand that.
Sure. I think for me, if you look at my career, it's kind of littered with changes because I love to learn new things. And kind of products that I have worked on, one might actually say that, hey, if you would have stayed there, it's a kind of a ticket to golden retirement. But I always like to learn new things. So as my, family is growing, kids go to college, I had an opportunity to take assignment outside of US. I have worked 20 plus years in US. And I always believed that when you go into new marketplaces, new ways of working, you learn a lot, especially as engineering executive. I would suggest everybody to go outside of whatever zone they are working on and actually learn. So it was mainly for me to learn outside of US how things are working. And obviously Dubai is catching a lot of attention. It's the next Silicon Valley, it's the desert valley, if I can coin a word for you. Because I really think that the innovation that I see here is what I actually observed in early days of Valley, where a lot of interesting people came and started building things. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be part of that, excitement. And I really think those two things kind of brought me here.
No, I was very similar. 14 plus years building and scaling companies in the UK, and could have carried on doing that. Exactly. And I was kind of like coasting along. Yeah. But for me, I kind of saw the growth, the innovation, and I think the biggest thing was actually making a difference to the region, where I could have huge amounts of impact as well over, the next 5 to 7 years in terms of bringing that expertise to the ecosystem. And obviously, hopefully, more and more executives like yourself are going to come to the Middle East. So what would you say are the 3 things, if you were trying to attract executives to the region now, that's going to excite them, other than what you said, that maybe the next Silicon Valley?
So the first thing I would say is the impact you can create, because I do believe that engineering executives are engineers first. Mm-hmm. And any engineer wants to write code or build systems that actually create impact. Wherever you are working, if it's a mature ecosystem, things are kind of settled for you. Either you're working on a new product in a company, but the system around that ecosystem is already built. You are just trying to iterate. Certain things in iterations are better. But as an executive, you sometimes want from the scratch when systems are not in place, how you actually do that. So first is creating impact. Second is actually understanding and stretching your own skill set and limitations, because as over the years you have picked on a lot of habits, lot of things, you kind of take things for granted. When you actually go to a new place, you actually understand the need and understand the value of certain system. For example, if you go out in the wilderness, you first start valuing your home, the hot water, for example. We take it for granted.
So you saying just there, it's definitely a place which will push executives out of their comfort zone.
And it actually makes you learn, right? Wisdom starts with discomfort. So when you put yourself in a discomfort position, you start gaining more wisdom, start gaining more learning. Third is also giving back. I always tell people that you are not a good executive, or you haven't fulfilled your dream if you haven't helped the ecosystem, because whatever success you have hit in your career, if you're a senior engineer or plus, you had success because there was an ecosystem, and it's your responsibility to then build that ecosystem for next generation of engineers, next generation of companies. I invest, as you said, in my, we have few startups that we invest in with my capital group. And what we look for is those founders who have groundbreaking ideas. They are doing good for the society, because I do believe giving back. So I think those 3 things I would say, if anybody is looking at Dubai, anybody is looking at MENA region to come here, it's not that it's because of other things that they do matter, but also about creating impact, learning, getting out of the comfort zone, and giving back to the community.
No, I love that. There's there's been a number of different executives now that I've spoken to that have, whether that's in Europe or in the US, they've spent 2 decades or so there, top FANG companies or interesting scale-ups, and their number one thing is, it's not about money for me.
Exactly.
It's about how do I now come back to like my roots and help to build and scale and be a part of the change as well. And I think that's definitely like admirable, and huge credible stories and legacy in the future as well, which I think is kind of important.
Agree.
What's one thing that's actually surprised you that you didn't expect?
So I think, frankly, like when you are sitting out there, you kind of surprised about the ecosystem. So, for example, the government support, and people have different ways of looking at that. But over here, I think the government and the ecosystem is actually wanting to build these things. So it's not just rah-rah, like empty promises, or just giving ecosystem some, venture funds. But I think it's the holistic system that there is in place. So I was surprised by dedication, the intention behind that, and commitment, because you could do something for a year and say, it didn't work out, because developing an ecosystem is a decades journey. And I can clearly see that the systems here are committed. The way, the immigration system is working, the way all the government offices are coordinating their efforts, it takes a lot of effort. And that commitment is very admirable. And that actually this community here should thank for that. And actually take the opportunity to kind of build on top of it, because you need these kind of support to kind of build meaningful value into the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Yes, these are early days, but I think the good thing about technology industry is all you need is support system, and then rest of things can just go wild, if you might want to say that. So I believe that that's one thing that I was super surprised about. Another thing that I also was like the hunger. I think there is a hunger from the community here where people really want to build amazing things. And I always say technology is the ultimate, ways to build value. And I believe that by creating this value system, you remove the barrier of artificial, barriers between, groups and communities, and actually you bring everybody together. So I believe this region can show rest of the world how you can actually build a thriving ecosystem in the middle of MENA region.
No, I agree. There's a different type of energy here, I would
Yes.
say, when people ask me as well. Obviously, there's been lots of over the years ecosystems that have continued to kind of grow and evolve, but here, I'd say with that kind of support mechanism and ecosystem for everybody, I think it drives not just appetite for like change and transformation, but people actually get behind it and want to collaborate and work together as well. So if I flip that question as well, what's one thing that's maybe disappointed you, but at the same time you feel that bringing your expertise to the region, you could maybe change that?
I think the way I would say, like where I kind of left wanting more is while there is enough ecosystem support and all, I think some of the companies as they have matured hasn't kind of participated in that ecosystem. Like I would love to see more from other mature players. Like yes, they have their own products to build and iterate and all that, but they have to remember that they are fruits of this kind of a field. You can't be like, yes, I'm a big grown trees and I don't need to worry about smaller trees, or even sometimes, oh my god, I'm afraid of smaller trees. And I always say, no, actually, if you are the only biggest tree in the jungle, the first thing gets chopped is the biggest tree. So you have to kind of have this little bit more of a community feel. They need to reinvest back into the ecosystem. They need to be providing guidance and coaching to other smaller, younger companies, do's and don'ts and best practices, and creating that thriving ecosystem. Because the reason why Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley is companies like Google in their early days were not just worried about how can I get a leg up on my rival, but they also wanted to make sure that the end consumer that we are serving needs to be thought of first. So if yes, I will have a competition with you, but the end consumer should not be hurt. So for example, at Property Finder, we also believe in that if the end consumer who is a property seeker, that should not be hurt. We should be about trust and transparency. We should seek better systems in that marketplace, regardless of what competition is doing, because we are a mature player, we are a bigger boy. and we have a bigger platform, and we do want to make sure that the consumer is protected no matter what. Yes, we will have our internal things within the competition and all that, and we should play fair, but at the same time consumer should not get hurt just because I'm playing competition, because eventually if there is a bad experience with that sector, it hurts all of us together. So that maturity, I think, and then giving back to the community, so there are more companies that can thrive in this kind of ecosystem.
No, I agree. And obviously there's more and more, which is a great thing, like upcoming startups in the region, predominantly obviously as well in real estate as well. How are, like, obviously Property Finder they have the monopoly and they have the investment and all that kind of stuff, and they have the team and the weight behind it, but there is always going to be threats as well to other businesses. Mm-hmm. How as a business internally do you, I suppose, support one another to continue to evolve and innovate and invest back into technology, especially as a business that's obviously moving in a slightly different direction as well?
Sure, I won't call ourselves monopoly, but yes, we do have a good healthy position into the market, and we do serve a number of other countries and all of that. So we do understand our place in the market. I do believe that the way we actually we partner with regulators, we partner with other players in the region, in the real estate market, and for example, there are things within Dubai that we can go and invest our learnings into Egypt and Saudi Arabia, because we do operate in multiple countries, in major countries in MENA region. We do understand the trends a little bit better because we have aggregated information, and we use that to not just gain some competitive edge, but we do learn about where the winds are blowing. We advise our consumers and our clients based on that, regulators as well, so that we can have a partnership going. And marketplace always is healthy when everybody shares right amount of data. There will be some trade secrets and other things that we protect, but that doesn't mean that we hoard information, because when you hoard information, it ferments, it becomes bad information, it's unusable. So information is like water, the more it flows, the cleaner it gets, and better and fresher it gets. So I believe in our duty to share information wisely, to actually let our other counterparts know about what we are seeing. For example, building trust into the ecosystem, removing fake listings, scammers, spammers. Because if you as a consumer had some bad experience with one particular company, you are going to be a little bit ticked off by that, and then you won't trust any online firm, for example, doing business online. And that actually hurts a small younger company far more than it could hurt us. So our goal is to kind of create that trust and transparency into the ecosystem, so that people can come in, play and participate and grow the bigger, so that even smaller younger companies that are building online platforms will thrive, and that actually brings more trust. So then people who are first time maybe stumbling on Property Finder to buy their property would also trust Property Finder. So if I create trust in the ecosystem, it helps me, and I need to have that maturity, rather than saying that it's only good for me and rest of it I don't care. That eventually doesn't work for anybody.
No, I agree, and obviously in the UK we worked with two businesses, Rightmove and Zoopla. Mm-hmm. What was always interesting is you'd go on Zoopla to basically find out how much does it cost, like what is your house worth, rent or buying, but then you'd actually go on Rightmove to sell or your property.
Yes.
It's a weird thing, and that has an element again of trust, or maybe that
Exactly.
consumer experience there as well. I want to understand, obviously, I think people in the region for sure with your background, like I said, two decades in the States working for FANG companies, like what does raising the bar mean to you?
I'm a big bar raiser. I believe in always expecting better out of me. Himanshu 5 years back, I hope that is this Himanshu version 2.0 or 20.0 based on my age is a different and better. Same thing for companies, and I believe in raising the bar, meaning that now you actually have gotten mature emotionally, you have gotten better. So companies also need to have a better bar, or maybe a company that is 2-year-old or 5-year-old worrying about revenue. Once you have enough revenue coming in, then you ask yourself, is this revenue coming with sustainable practices, or I'm kind of skimming some of the things, my marketing is overarching and not useful for my consumer. So you mature, and that is raising the bar. In talent, engineering talent, maybe 5 years back, 10 years back, a functioning software was the bar. Now the software needs to be excellent at it. It needs to also tell you whether you can monitor it or not, and can you actually observe your software better in production. Can you take care of cybersecurity? Because before you might not have worried about it 10 years back. Now there could be scammers looking at this amazing marketplace where there is a lot of money exchanging hands, which was not there before. So bad actors will get attracted to that. So that's raising the bar. Thinking about users' data, privacy, some of the information that readily we kind of put it on WhatsApp and started sharing with people now needs to be looked at a little bit differently and say, can I do that? Because now I have people's passport information and other information. So there is a raising the bar. There is the raising bar on leadership. Before making my product stable and grow more out of fewer people was the bar. Now it's, am I taking care of my people? And Property Finder is big on people culture. We have very thriving culture aspect to it. I have been hiring and we'll be hiring more soon. And you will see that and new people, when they come into Property Finder, the first thing in first week they talk about is like, oh my god, I never knew that I could find a company like this, a culture like this in middle of Dubai. Because people come with certain maybe wrong stereotype expectation, and they see this company with Silicon Valley type of culture, the working environment, people are relaxed, having fun, cracking jokes, and that is raising the bar. So I want Property Finder to raise the bar. I want me to raise the engineering bar within the region and say what it means to build scalable systems. I was part of Office 365 team, built Prime Video recommendations engine for Amazon.
Weren't you part of the guy that basically demolished Blockbuster?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I have some proud moments around that. So anytime when you open Prime Videos and you see any recommendations being made to me, my team was the one that actually launched in 200 countries before it was in 4 marketplaces. So we were part of that team. I was the part of the team that launched LinkedIn Learning, and basically be part of the first few versions of it. So my point is that when we actually worked on these projects, it actually helps you understand how complex systems are developed. And we only don't worry about working, functioning software. We think about, can it scale? Can it actually go 200 million customers in a second? We usually used to get 12 milliseconds to return a recommendation back to the front end. So that actually requires you to scale your systems a little bit differently. So these are all examples of raising the bar, and one is not enough. You need to have all aspects where you are raising the bar, and I think Dubai has that capability to raise the bar.
Mm-hmm. And I want to unpick a couple of those bits there, because obviously you've been a part of building high-performing teams, and you talk about the different components around raising the bar. So how would someone go about doing that, whether that's in the Middle East or giving examples of Property Finder there as well, because it is a transition, it is a change, there is a lot of different nuances there. It's a lot of things that I've seen already with the kind of lack of progression frameworks, team matrix, even when it comes to leveling and understanding and what that actually is. And there'll also be 2 parts to that component, because you'll get some people that will be on that bus and some people that won't be on that bus, which you're going to have to expect, right? Because it is a part of transition and change and mindset and ways of working.
Sure. So I think there are few components that go into getting the team ready for transformation and transition. And I have been doing transitions and transformations for last 15 plus years and building teams, high performing teams. And the first aspect of that is you have to be bold. You have to set the expectation and tone within the team that we are here to do good. So people understand that any changes that are upcoming are not a cost-cutting exercise or favoritism exercise or some mundane things that you are doing. There needs to be a bigger, bolder purpose. So I always say start with a purpose. As Dan Pink says, start with your why. Why are you doing that? Not to double the revenue. I always say never ever think about revenue, because I remember my first all hands company meeting at Amazon. This was very, very, in like 2013 or 14-ish time frame, 10, 12 years back. Jeff Bezos said one thing very clearly, that don't focus on output, focus on input, because that's what you can control. And that is very important thing when you are transitioning or transforming a team. You have to tell why, what is the input into it, because output, for example, is revenue. There are so many factors that can impact revenue, and people beat themselves up on revenue. But your product excellence is your input. That 100% I can control. Nobody in market can come and say, deliver a bad product. I will always deliver good product. That's in my control.
But that's for everyone there, though,
exactly.
right? In terms of like how you measure success,
Exactly.
right? It is
and
all about
inputs matter.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
But sorry to interject there, but just on that, because you obviously mentioned, don't think about obviously the revenue part, but you've probably seen it. There's been a lot of talks recently, especially with the C-suite CPOs, that they've been so fixated for years and focused on the actual just like the product, but not really thinking how the business like makes money.
Yes.
And impacts. So there's kind of like...
So absolutely, I think the reverse is also true. Like you cannot be focused so much on input that output is veering off.
Yeah.
So I think the idea there is when you think about the output and you don't think about input, it kind of gives you a wrong thing. So never focus on just one thing that's outside of your control. Don't do innovation for sake of innovation. Don't do engineering for sake of engineering. If you have an amazing platform that's scalable, build up obviously better and monitors itself, but no customer comes and uses it, it's as good as not developing it. So don't over engineer things. So to answer your question, when we get a team ready for transformation, when we are actually asking team to raise the bar, the first thing to do is start looking at the purpose, the why are you doing it? Well, we are doing this. I want Property Finder to be the best portal out there, so that when property seeker come there, they know that we know them, so that if you come on Property Finder, please create your login so we know more about you, and you can then be served with listings that you care more for. And when you haven't done that, we will still give you the best listings that you basically would love to explore.
And I could be speaking out of turn here because I don't know.
No.
But do you think from an outsider's perspective and now an inside perspective, has Property Finder maybe become a bit complacent recently? The reason why I would say that is because like even myself comes to the region, they know that people are going to download their app and use the app or web, whatever it might be, because they're the dominant player. So to a certain extent, it doesn't mean they have to consistently innovate because the numbers probably speak for itself, right? So when it comes to technology being the enabler and innovation and stuff that you were talking about earlier around like safety and transparency, and it's very much about the customer. Yep. So is that a part of some of the transition?
You bring up a very good point. So if this was any other company per se, and let's say you have a dominant position in the market and you kind of become complacent, yes, it could happen. The good thing at Property Finder is our leadership team. Like what we believe in is not just a number revenue or a profit margin or something. We are really here with a purpose. We are here to make living good for the region, right? We want to really do that. That is the purpose that we believe in. So what actually happens is we are not tied with a number and we are satisfied and we stop innovating, because we all know that even Google can't do that. Like even though they are the 80% plus search market, a company like OpenAI can come and kick your behind, right? Like, so you have to always be innovating. Second thing is when you actually set a culture of innovation, it's not about somebody saying let's stop innovating. It's like bringing people in. So we are hiring people from FANG companies and other innovative places, bringing that talent in, growing homegrown talent. We have amazing talent here in our headquarters. So when we start innovating as a company, there is no end goal. There's no finish line where we'll be like, okay, now we are done, let's go and grab a drink and relax. We do relax, but at the same time innovation keeps going. So I don't believe that our experience is static. We let it go. We are actually at the forefront of it, and the way we innovate is we also challenge ourselves, as I was saying earlier, in raising the bar. So that's a great question, because we believe in out innovating our own self, saying, hey, we did this a year back, now we need to do different. Now we need to do more. And you clearly see the key marketplaces, differentiators that we have created. Super agent, we have created price realism. We know that actually getting regulators in and actually creating a compliance engine actually is a better thing for us, because otherwise your site is just ridden with scammers and spammers. So we do actually sometimes don't share the leads, even though we make money on those for when a consumer is interested in a transaction. But if I just wanted to make money, I can just open the floodgates and get all the bad leads to our consumers, right, and our clients. So we want to make sure that there is a trust on both sides, because we are a marketplace. Even though we may be making money from certain parts of our ecosystem, we are as much hold accountable to the other part, because if that's not working for you, eventually the other thing will dry up too. So we understand to balance the equation.
Yeah. And obviously you're a techie, but you have a product engineering mindset, which to you just seems normal,
Yes.
especially from the States, right? And I remember that transition in the UK. It was 2010, 2011, especially from a product perspective. You didn't even used to call them product managers. They were BAs, project managers, scrum masters, and everyone, all the founders were like, how do I become a product-led organization? And products sat at that intersection between everything. And we went on that journey, and I'm like, can you get me one of those product leaders from the US that really understand engineering? So for you now, coming to the region, and still Middle East reminds me a little bit back then to some extent, and companies say that they're product-led, but actually arguably they're not. What is your thoughts and perspective on that? And are you going to be a part of that transition and change? Because even getting engineers to think, about the kind of we're saying, the product and the impact is
Great question. And I really care a lot about it, because it's very easy sometimes to get lost in the words. So when people think product-led company, they think product management department-led company. That's not the point. Point is, are you putting experience at the middle and center of your customer proposition, your value proposition? So if, for example, I order a meal from, let's say, Kareem or anywhere, what is my value proposition? Is it just that in 50 dirham I got this meal? Is that the value prop? Or the entire experience was smooth, able to find the right meal, the restaurant, the delivery experience, the payment experience, the after delivery experience, the meal was not crushed or smooshed, or so it entire experience. So that's your product. Your product experience is the key value prop. Meal is a part of it. So if you go to Property Finder, your entire experience, the search experience, the listing experience, the page that loads, is that right information? Does it show right pictures? Is the picture better quality? Is the listing clear? Is the listing available? Is the listing fake? Does it have the price? That's 1/10. Because then you will get a lot of people interested in, guess what? When you go to the agent, he'll say, oh my God, sorry, I actually have a wrong price information. You will trust that platform less. So that's part of entire platform. So if you think about it, engineering has to play a big part into it. Data needs to be cleansed, need to be clean, needs to be trustworthy, checked with the regulator website, so that we can actually verify that this listing has a permit on the paper. So we only show listing that has certain compliance checks done, are verified. We have a verification team. So it's not just product management as a department. It's engineering, product, CX, sales, legal, finance, everybody working together and partnering with ecosystem outside the company. So that's the product-led environment. There are companies out there, they think that they can just copy us and just, stick it to us. But we believe that we are here to innovate for consumers. Our product is better product. That's the reason why we have a certain position in the marketplace. And that also comes with a warning that, hey, somebody can copy your product. So we have to continue to innovate, not just to get ahead of the competition, but we have to also provide our consumers a differentiating experience. Mm-hmm. And that comes with product, engineering, design, CX, everybody working together. And that working together means that everybody's roles are evaluated constantly. What used to be a business analysis is now product management. What today is product management, tomorrow could be, an engineer who can come up with an amazing idea. And we at Property Finder believe in that. An engineer could write an algorithm or could write a good idea that eventually gets into the product. So innovation can come from anywhere, not just person wearing the hat of product manager, mm-hmm. right? So we believe in that. But we do also understand that the people who work at Property Finder are also innovators. We bring best of the best people from outside, which actually will come with their own ideas. So we always hire smart and let them do what they are at best, rather than tell them what to do. So I think that question is really well in terms of, product experience led rather than just that function led.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you're also an investor. Mm-hmm. You have your own fund. So I'd love to know from your perspective, what is the blueprint to build a successful company, and maybe what advice, again, you bring expertise from the US, one of the most established, obviously, ecosystem from a VC private equity backed technology businesses. So what would advice also, so kind of two-part questions, would you have for investors in the region and also founders either seeking investments or, like I say, building companies and Himanshu's blueprint for success.
So I think it's a very fascinating thing how I got into this thing. Usually when people get into VC funds, the idea is relatively simple economics. You put 10 and then you reap maybe $1 million, right? That's usually how things work. My idea of my angel fund, Be Human Capital, was actually a little bit different. That's why I put the name Be Human. Because one of the things I learned is if you're a founder, what happens? The life cycle of the companies, you have an idea, you create an MVP, you bootstrap, you go to angel investors who will give you some seed money, then you have a product market fit, and then you basically go series A, B, C, D. The biggest problem I tell people is that getting that first $1 million check from a VC. The moment you get that, actually totally different activities start happening. And I saw that when I walked into some of these companies, and I see that the platform was such in a mess, because what happened is as soon as you get that first $1 million, the founder starts hiring for people. So he's distracted. He's not value creating. He's not actually solving the problem his vision started from. And then because there is a money
but
attached.
Just on that, sorry, before
sure.
you go on, I'm just going to say agreed, but they also a lot of the case studies and a lot of the advice that we'd give is the founder should be making the first 10 hires of their business, because a lot of the stats beyond that that's what makes the some of the most successful
so they
companies.
should be involved in hiring, not distracted by. Maybe that's the key difference. So they should be involved in building the team. And what my fund does is, like, we usually target those companies that have series A or some sort of good funding available, so they're about to make that mistake, and our goal is to save them from making that mistake, where founders have to be like 80-90% involved in hiring. They spend a lot of time. So our goal is to go in with these founders and help them build the first scaled platform, because I have years of experience. I have a network who actually, if you need a CISO, or you need a chief data officer, or you need a CMO, or CRO guidance, we can actually bring these people, very strategic advisors, right at my fingertips. And then we can also go to smart engineers who are in my network, companies who provide good talent at a rate that is easier. And the way our fund works is, like, we provide that money, so we give you credits, you build that, you are part of the hiring process, you hire these people, but we select it for you so that you are not constantly waiting time. So idea is to spend least amount of time in getting the team ready, the first team ready. That team basically builds you the platform. Then you start creating value, because goal is to get to the first million or 100,000 ARR. And that is the key in any founder's life. You're chasing the right amount of money so you actually are profitable, and show your investors that you are making money. Because once you do that, rest is kind of basic mechanics that can take over and say, well, your platform works, it's generating 100,000 ARR, tell me what I put on the other side of the input so I can get the 10x revenue. Then you have figured out how the marketplace going to work for you.
So you're basically removing a big part of the headache and just accelerating it and let the founders do what they do best.
Exactly. Right. So getting back them to the working drawing table, rather than on things. So we have partners like who are good at talent finding, and I have made that connections, and I have made those network where I can make a phone call and say, hey, this person needs 10 engineers, 1 product manager. And the teams who have worked with me, they know that Himanshu is no BS person. They know that I know the system for so long. There's no other BS that is going to happen. And we definitely get right talent for the job, rather than the most expensive talent who might do the job. And that's the idea behind that. So my advice, to answer your question, is for founders, the advice is do your best value creation. Make sure that at any point before you hit whatever is your ARR target for exits and all these things, 80-90% of your time should go in value creation. The moment you are spending more time on any other function, you are away from your main goal. And I know it's a trade-off decision, and every day it's a very hard decision, but creating value and creating a company is very hard. Second thing for investors is also for VCs. And then we actually partner, my fund partners with other VCs who have investments that they need to turn around that's not working really well. So we go in there as strategic advisors at times and say, okay, make these 3 changes to your platform, make these 5 changes in your team or strategy, and bring back to the working kind of side of the equation. So we tell the investors, like, creating pressure is good, but don't let your founder crush under your pressure. This is not a stock market where you can invest in a script and have a PE ratio and other numbers that are going to make sense. This is a creative process. if you give enough time to a founder and their teams, they're going to build amazing value, and you need to have a patience in there. And I understand that investors have their own pressures, and that's why we feel that we Be Human Capital kind of bridges that gap between founder and their VC by coming in as a strategic advisor, helping create value for everyone.
Awesome. I mean, sounds incredible. And you spoke a lot around talent and hiring there, and the fundamentals of building a great company is having great people. It's probably one of my biggest frustrations in the region, coming from spending a lot of time obviously in Europe and US. When it comes to talent and hiring, I feel like from a founder's perspective, it should be at the forefront of your mind. And here I believe it is, but at the same time, it just lacks process, structure, understanding of what good even looks like, and that real investment. It's a very transactional industry at the moment. And I don't even know if that's at the fault to the founders. I think that's the way that the ecosystem is currently involved. And I'm definitely here to change that and level it up, and have done with the partners that really want to invest in that time up front. So from your perspective, like how do you think we can level up talent and hiring here in the Middle East?
So the first thing is, sometimes there are a few ways to do it. The way I think my fund takes the route is like, we take the science away from you, meaning we don't bother you with all the details. We look at your business proposition and your platform in its current state, and then we invest right people and right talent and say, you don't worry about it. Here's the team that is going to build it for you. And yes, sometimes the founders who are not tech savvy at times over here, I have found out they're more business savvy at times, would actually say like, oh my God, I thought this platform will be ready in 2 months. And I'm like, no, this kind of platform takes years to build, but because you have come to us, we will do it in 6 months or less. So for example, making them understand that, hey, this is a software development is a complex process. Platform development is even more complex. So understanding the talent you need is good. Mm-hmm. Second is also to educate that just because you hire 15 nuclear physicists is not going to fix your plumbing. I tell people, like, you need a job for a right kind of a talent. And sometimes companies, even mature companies, make that mistake. They overhire, wrong hire, over-invest, under-invest. And sometimes we don't have time to waste our time on that. So we go in and we actually talk about it.
I agree. It's that my first question is like really unpicking and reverse engineering that, is like what you want versus what you need. Yep. And there is like an art and science behind it. We'll start to really kind of unpick with them and build out scorecards, frameworks, like what is the actual mission of the role? Because it actually makes a founder think. I mean, ChatGPT seems to be the thing now for writing a job spec, but I mean, a job spec, a job advert, and an actual mission of a role is very different things, because you start to think about the culture aspects, you start to think about the competencies. You're a founder and you're like, okay, how do I measure success in 6 months for this individual? And when you start to like unpick certain of these like data points, you actually understand from that like methodology, you'll start to understand what you actually need for the business and how that fits into the wider business context
exactly.
as well.
And like when I build any engineering team, sometimes people think like if you just bring 10 people who worked at Amazon and Meta who are senior 10 plus years, somehow they will build better software. Well, they don't. Why? Imagine, just for a hypothetical example, there is an engineering team with 10 senior engineers who have 10 plus years of experience, who come from amazing companies they worked in. I would doubt that anything gets done, because they'll argue more, because they all come from that. So you need diversity into your team. You need a couple of senior engineers, couple of junior engineers, couple of mid-level engineers. There are golden ratios about it. Over the years, I have learned those golden ratios, right? So in Amazon and other companies, there is 2 pizza team. There is the format where you actually have 4 SD1s, 3 SD2s, and 1 SD3, because then somebody decides the strategy. Should be usually 1 or 2, fewer people deciding strategies, so not too many cooks in the kitchen. Middle level who can translate the strategy and create a system design, which is SD2's job. And then SD1s need to do just the work. They don't need to do system design. You don't need 5 people all fighting for strategy. So you need to have a healthy balance of that. And I think when you talk about talent, you need to have a mix of talent. So some junior talent, some middle level, some senior talent. And as an engineering manager role, when you are trying to fill up, don't try to bring somebody who has only worked in mature companies, because they'll expect certain ecosystem, like we talked about in our first question. Like if you don't have that ecosystem around you, you will miserably fail. Then people actually say like, oh, you know what, that person was not good. He came from blah fang company and he couldn't deliver here. No, look at your ecosystem. Maybe you have a problem there. Don't blame a person. Maybe they have something else they need to learn. but sometimes people actually just very quick to point at somebody and tag to that rather than look in the mirror and say we have some bad processes in our company or bad hiring or bad culture in the system. So it's a very complicated question.
I think it's a double-edged sword there as well, like especially here, particularly in the region, but I'd probably say globally is having those like progression frameworks in place and everyone actually understanding their role and their place as well. And I think is like fundamental in terms of some of the basics of building the right culture for business as well from day one as well. I want to move on to actually what it means to be a CTO and what that means to you, especially with someone that brings obviously so much experience, and I think part and parcel as well here in Dubai in particular, what the Middle East, should we say, is sometimes people get it wrong in hiring a CTO because they don't need a CTO. They need a VP of engineering or whatever it might be. So I would like to understand from your perspective, what does it mean to be a CTO?
Sure. And you brought up a very good point. I do feel that there are three levels of leading an engineering department. So either you need a head of engineering, or you need a VP of engineering, for example, or you need a CTO. And there are very different job roles, very different profiles, and sometimes people use it interchangeably. And I tell them like, no, one is nuclear missile, another could be a shovel. They both dig a hole, but how they dig the hole is very different.
Well, I could be wrong, but I go with like, to keep it simple, I'm like CTO, strategy, visionary, part and parcel VP is all about people management, and then another part of it is obviously the architecture side of it that kind of sits in between, right?
And if you look at it, like for example, let's unpack the three levels, right? So people who are listening to this understand and maybe challenge me at times, could be. But if you think about head of engineering, they're all about just engineering process, running the engineering function in a very optimal way. But they are not necessarily designing their budgets. They are not worried about their finances and all these things. While VP of engineering, or in my opinion, like a vice president, will have some fiduciary responsibility. They will be given a piece of maybe P&L, or they know how the P&L attaches. Some head of engineering may be acting as a VP without knowing. So I'm not talking about if your role, your mileage may vary, for example. So disclaimer, a big asterisk on that. But the CTO is not just about running engineering. CTO's job, in my opinion, is actually how engineering can improve the balance sheet of the company. So it's almost like looking at the market, almost looking at our competition and marketplace opportunities. A CTO will work with the rest of the C-suite and say, we should do these two new products. We should actually put our engineering might on this side because it's evolving. So they are far more strategic thinkers, as you said. As a VP of engineering, you are strategically thinking about your department, but not about the company and its position in the marketplace. So CTO is outsider in looking, saying what we need to do in our engineering department, and then advising rest of the C-suite. And as every company is becoming tech company in front of our eyes, whether you are a tech company or not, CTOs are becoming far more important because they are almost like a co-CEO. If your CTO is not your co-CEO and you are a tech company, you're not going to be a tech company for longer.
Well, that's a part of the founder assessment though, right?
Exactly.
Everything you say there, and having that CEO entrepreneurial mindset as a CTO as well, right?
Exactly. And that's why I think, I'm not saying because I'm a CTO, it just happens to be that I'm sitting in this amazing time when tech is becoming almost like how fire was in early days, where everything helped with fire, right? So industrial revolution came with steam engines. So I really think that CTOs are the driving force in next level of growth. I would even say, like, when I look at some opportunities that come to my fund, rather than asking who's the CEO, I ask who's the CTO, show me profile of CTO, what they have done, because that's the engine that's going to build the next generation of that company.
So do you think that helps with funding as well?
Oh, absolutely. Who is your CTO, in my mind, is far more important to me, or equally important to me, as who is your CEO.
Yeah.
Because that is the dance. Your CEO and CTO is the couple. They're going to deliver and take this entire family together, because if your tech is not working, the CEO's revenue is going to suffer. Rest of the department will suffer. If you're not investing in your engineering team or product team, your product will suffer. Your customers will use less product. Your revenue will decline. So it's so integral to that. Now, if you are a Subway sandwich shop, obviously your bread needs to be fresher than your app. But if assuming that all your things are fresh and good, if your app sucks, nobody's going to come to the bread that you baked so lovingly, right? So tech is going to play a very integral part in this next generation. where obviously AI is taking it to even next level. But I do believe that CTOs are far more important than sometimes people give credit for.
We haven't actually spoke about AI. I kind of tried to avoid it because otherwise we could go down a rabbit hole and broad, and I'm sure you have a view and perspective. Maybe we can get to it at the end. I'm a big fan of ascending talent. So I'd love to know what advice you have for the next generation of CTOs.
So the first thing is do your homework on business. You need to have business acumen. Why revenue matters, why functioning software matters to revenue, not to your own liking. Don't over engineer things, like how you can optimal engineer your way into your company. So upcoming CTOs are those people who know what is my infrastructure cost. If I'm going to build this amazing AI algorithm, again I'm putting AI maybe, that is it going to blow up my budget in my OPEX? These are the engineers who are going to be tomorrow's CTOs. And I'll tell you who might not be a good suited for that. Obviously the opposite, people who keep building software for sake of building software. They keep coming and telling you, I have this amazing idea, when maybe customers are not yet ready for it. I'm not saying customers don't want it, but they may not be ready for it. So you have to bridge between your idea and current, and then create that bridge. So as a CTO, you may have a vision that, hey, I want to go, from here to North Pole, but you need to know how you're going to get to North Pole. You need to go from here to North Pole. So it's always building that roadmap, the path of your engineering platform, your team talent, and then bridging both of those. I can't actually say my platform will be all cloud and AI when you are running on-prem. First, get your house in order. You have a tech debt issue, so pay that tech debt. You create a challenge within the team to upskill. You homogenize the team. So these are the upcoming CTO's main challenges.
Okay, and you're a CTO. You land your new job. What is your advice, to ensure that they're successful? Because I think there's a big gap globally still in a sense around onboarding. I have lots of ideas and concepts of how we could improve that and make it better. And I think a part of that comes to transparency up front as well, and giving their new execs an inside scoop of the business, making sure that there's no skeletons in the closet, so they know what they're landing in. What advice would you have for CTOs landing in a job first 3 months in terms of what they should do to be successful?
Absolutely. So the way I usually try to approach my job, whether it's whatever is the title, but if I'm in some engineering capacities, first look at your platform, talk to your engineers, go, like people say, listening tour, but actually active listening is far more important to me. So look at the logs yourself, look at your portal, your dashboards yourself. Don't just rely on somebody telling you that. So what does that mean? That means as a CTO, if you don't have hands-on skills in any of your work being an engineer, learn that, because that's going to be super important. When you talk to your engineers and you can talk in their lingo, you get another level of credibility. Your team trusts you more. If I'm talking with any of my engineer, looking at the code and pointing out why that code is written this way, you will learn so much. So doing that active listening, active learning, understand your platform challenges firsthand. Then start writing something. Maybe you write a small piece of code that you try to actually release. It will tell you what is your software engineer's day-to-day life looks like. Then try to write a requirement for your product manager and see what their day-to-day life looks like. And obviously you will have a bigger job. You will have executive C-suite to be making relationships and building understandings of what is CEO challenge, what is revenue challenge, what is marketplace challenge. But if you don't know your platform's challenges, your engineers' challenges, your product managers' challenges, you're not going to be helping C-suite anymore. You will be always struggling because you are helping C-suite, but your team is not trusting you. You don't have right information firsthand. You don't have marketplace understanding of what's happening. Try to use your product. The first thing I did when I came to Dubai is I made friends, some of the taxi drivers, some of the Talabat drivers, and I actually learned from them what is it to get a property in Dubai market. What is it to get a small rental apartment? What are the challenges? What is Ijari? What is regulatory framework here? Because if I go through that, believe me, the platform I'm going to build will have those pieces and pain points inherently addressed in there. So you have to be first hand in a lot of things. And as a new joiner, you have an opportunity to make a big mark by, either just sweet talking and giving big visions. But if it's not rooted in the bottom, you can never grow a tree that is pie in the sky, right? You always need roots in the reality and earth that you live in. So I think your understanding of these things are very important for your first 30, 60, 90 plan, and always have that.
Well, if you'd have asked me that question, I would have said, how do I get better transparency in terms of rating of my landlord?
Exactly.
I would love to know a really defined rating of the landlords as well, to understand the previous tenants, because it's first-hand feedback.
Yep.
And similar a bit more on the actual estate agencies as well.
Sure. So we do have that. So that's some of the things that we worked on when I came here. So I've been here 9-10 months. Few of the things we actually released is customer ratings on the agency side and agents. As I was saying earlier, we have this badge called super agent. Even though we do earn money on when a listing gets published, we still rate. Imagine you actually rating your own customer who are paying you money, and they love it because they know that when I'm on Property Finder, when I bring my business to Property Finder, they are going to ask the consumers how good I am doing, how is my agent doing. And when agent actually shows very good behavior and best practices, they are super agents. We tag them. So if you go on Property Finder today and you click on a listing and the agent has a badge called super agent, that means they have passed a lot of good behavior practices. They are very responsive, transparent, they serve their consumers well. So you are absolutely bringing the right point. Definitely, we could work on the landlord and bring that transparency. There are a lot of other challenges in bringing that data in. So we definitely work with regulators to build those kind of platforms to understand how the rental market is doing, landlords are doing, so we can actually be. So that's why we have a lot of work ahead of us. I think I have job security here.
100%. So look, I just want to finish up real quick fire questions, so like quick responses from you. First of all, what advice do you have for CTOs?
So the advice for CTO is be humble. Be on the ground, listen to your engineers and product managers and your C-suite and serve your customers. They are your customers.
What book would you recommend to your audience?
Oh, Originals. Really good book.
Okay.
Adam
Originals.
Grant. Originals from Adam Grant.
How to manage the boardroom.
Boardroom, read Hit Refresh. Really good book. I think you will learn how Satya kind of engaged the entire board a little bit differently than previous CEOs, and look where Microsoft is right now.
And what last thing would you like to leave the audience in terms of building and scaling amazing technology companies and teams in the region?
So I would say be optimistic. You always want to start with positive energy and start with positive intent. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, as a job of CTO or any other job in technology market, especially growing technology market, there are growing pains. The economy, the understanding, the ecosystem has its own challenges, talent, as we talked about. Everything is challenge. But that shouldn't be negative. It should actually propel you to saying, oh, we could solve that. So having positive mindset is very important. I tell my team that when I walk in the building at my work and when I leave, I have more energy at the end of the day because I feel so fulfilled with all the challenges that I'm solving. There are bad days sometimes. There are more challenging days. But actually, if you don't have that positive energy, if you get tired with your work, you must be something missing. And that's called job satisfaction. So I always believe in that.
That's a whole nother thing, right?
Exactly.
Passion and purpose.
Passion and purpose are very important. So I would leave with that to the team who is listening, that actually you should have the purpose. And if you are not purposeful, find that purpose. It's so easy, you need to find your purpose and then work on it.
I love that, and leave your ego at the door for sure.
Absolutely.
It's a big thing as well. So look, thank you, Himanshu, for joining our first podcast in the region, which is everything around breaking down barriers and building and scaling amazing technology companies. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting. It was a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.